Well, it is a tall order to talk about the role of the United States in the world today. But why don't we start right there?
Well, now as the U.S. is losing its edge economically, it has one clear comparative advantage, and that's in killing. And it's using it. Obama has increased the attacks on Afghanistan and Pakistan. Brookings Institution last year estimated that for every one militant, as they put it, killed in Pakistan, the U.S. drones kill 10 civilians. And they said that was okay. They defended the U.S. policy. General Michael Hayden, former head of the CIA, also the National Security Agency, also former director of national intelligence, said that our default position is to kill our adversaries, referring to the use of the drones. Harold Koh, who's the legal advisor for the Justice Department, earlier this year at a State Department briefing on the results of the review conference on the International Criminal Court, described the international legal environment that the U.S. had helped shape. And he said this: "No U.S. national can be prosecuted for aggression. We ensure total protection to our American forces and other nationals going forward." So, in that situation, the U.S. defines who the adversary is. The default U.S. position is to kill the adversary. When you kill the adversary, you kill 10 civilians. What are the survivors, the loved ones of those civilians, supposed to do when the international legal system is rigged so that there is no peaceful redress, so they have no place to go? It's unjustified. It's terrorism by the U.S. law's own definition. But it's also ominous for Americans, especially ominous in a historical moment where the U.S. is losing its edge. Right now, it still has the massive military advantage, but how long is that going to last? Other countries have more people to field as troops. Other countries can manufacture weapons more cheaply. The U.S. still has the edge in military technology, but in today's information age, that can't last very long. So if the appeal to decency can't wake up Americans and make them say stop, maybe the appeal to self-interest and fear can do it. Imagine a moment not too far in the future. Some of the technical magazines just started writing about this, where foreign countries would have the capacity to put drones in the skies over New York, over San Diego, over Alabama, over Chicago. How would Americans feel about that when the discretion on whether to push the button on the missile and launch it at anyone in the U.S., a member of Congress, a member of the president's staff, a GI, someone walking down the street, when that discretion lies with someone in some foreign capital, some commander. And imagine how Americans would feel if those overseas controllers of the drones flying in the skies over the U.S. decided to apply American standards. If they decided to apply the Brookings standard that says, okay, if we target one American military planner and we kill 10 civilians, that's okay. If they decide to apply General Hayden's standard that, well, it's our default position to kill these adversaries. And if they decide to apply the U.S. State Department standard, which says no matter what we do, we can't be prosecuted. That's the situation that the U.S. is setting up, and it's going to be increasingly dangerous for Americans as time goes by.
The international soldier death toll in Afghanistan is, well, I think as of this broadcast, around 709. Almost 500 of those are U.S. soldiers. It's the deadliest year in what we're in the 10th year, the longest war the U.S. has been involved in, ongoing war in the history of this country. What about Afghanistan, what you feel needs to be done?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the killings of U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. To me, one of the most interesting points that's made in the documents released by WikiLeaks came out in some of their earlier releases, particularly their Iraq War logs. If you read those, you see that when the U.S. military is reporting on U.S. killings of civilians in Iraq or in Afghanistan, they almost always say, well, we did it to protect our forces. Some of our soldiers came under fire, we responded, and we wiped out the house. In some cases, they end up wiping out the whole village compound, and that's why those civilians were killed. Or there was fire from the ground. Our men were in the air in a helicopter. We returned fire. It turned out that it was a wedding party on the ground, and they were shooting their guns in celebration. But we did it with the intent of protecting our forces. And there's a certain logic to that. If you're a soldier and you're in combat, naturally you want to protect yourself and protect your friends, and you will do everything possible to do that, including killing someone who you speculate might be firing at you or might potentially fire at you. So that inevitably sets up a situation where when you send troops into a country in a hostile situation, when you invade a country, that means, really it means in a practical sense, that in order to protect your troops, you have to kill civilians. You have to kill them in large numbers. And that's what the U.S. is doing in Afghanistan. That's what it did in Iraq. And that's what it's setting up to do in a series of other places. It's an inevitable result of the initial act of invasion, and in legal terms, what is often the initial act of aggression.